Welcome to this Sheffield Sunday as Bill sees it meeting. This is a main share meeting, and today it is with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome Murph from California, who has come to share for about 40 minutes, after which we'll open up for general sharing, or if you would like to ask Murph a question. Thank you so much for being here at an ungodly hour, Murph, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, evening, afternoon. My name's Murph. I'm an alcoholic. It's funny. I woke up at 4:10 in the morning, and I was about to put my head back on the pillow and just go back to sleep just for 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes, like it was going to make a difference. And I decided not to. I decided to get up, and now I have no excuses about being tired, and we'll see where this takes us. So I decided to read on page 8, A New Life. And it starts out with, in sobriety, all that we are to expect of a spiritual awakening. Is sobriety all that we are to expect of a spiritual awakening? No, sobriety is only a bare beginning. It is only the first gift of the first awakening. If more gifts are to be received, our awakening has to go on. As it does go on, we find that bit by bit, we can discard the old life, the one that did not work, for a new life that can and does work under any conditions whatever. Regardless of worldly success or failure, regardless of pain or joy, regardless of sickness or health, or even of death itself, a new life of endless possibilities can be lived if we are willing to continue our awakening through the practice of the AA 12 steps. Absolutely love this. Love this, love this, love this. And I hate to say this, but I can pretty much guarantee that 80% of the people that are here today did not do an 11th step when they woke up this morning, or did not do an 11th step when they went to bed last night. And, the whole message, there's only one message in Alcoholics Anonymous, one. And we're going to hear a bunch of stuff from a bunch of people, but there's really only one message in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. And it tells us that in the 12th step reading. After having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, I tried to carry this message to alcoholics. This whole thing is about a spiritual awakening. And in short term, it's a complete psychic change. It's a complete shift in the way I think and the way I perceive things. Our alcoholism, our problem centers in our minds, right? And if I don't switch that, if I don't start I'll go science on you, neural pathways throughout my brain and get rid of the old ones, the ones that I've been habitually using for years and years and years, I'm going to walk around here miserable. 13 years ago, I walked into a meeting with Alcoholics Anonymous in San Francisco, and there was a man sharing, and I'd never heard anyone share like he was sharing. I'd never heard the things that he was sharing. I don't know if I was so desperate to be open to hear this, but after the meeting was over with, I walked up to him and I said, "I'm dying in Alcoholics Anonymous. Can you help me, please?" And he said, "It would be my honor to help you." And we went to his place I went to his place the next day, and I told him a little about myself. And he asked me the most important question I've ever been asked in Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, "Are you ready to stop working Murph's Anonymous? Are you ready to stop picking and choosing the parts of this program that you want to do, leaving the rest, and expect the beautiful life that Alcoholics Anonymous gives you if you follow the directions in our book?" And that hit me like a brick. And I realized in that moment that for all the years that I had been in Alcoholics Anonymous, I had never worked Alcoholics Anonymous. And That was a big shocker. See, I had 2 years in the first time. Then I went out for 2 years. Ugly. Then I was back in for 8 years. And I went out for 2 more years. I just celebrated 15 years in May. And it's a whole different sobriety. I didn't realize what I know now is that the many times that I worked the steps in those years, I had never had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. I had never fully committed to Alcoholics Anonymous. I had never fully surrendered. I was more in compliance, which a lot of us are. You know, is your life unmanageable and are you an alcoholic? Yes. Without ever thinking about it or going through it in our big book about finding out what our disease is, why we have this disease, that the disease is in our mind. And so those first 2 years, the sponsor was, excuse me, not the sponsor, but the many well-intended people that were in my life said things like, meeting makers make it. Commitments will keep you sober. Your sponsor will keep you sober. And that was not my experience. To the new people here, meetings are vital for you. Go to as many meetings as you possibly can. Get commitments at those meetings. But they're not going to keep me sober in and of themselves. So if you're just going to meetings and that's all you're doing and you're wondering why you're feeling the way you are, if you're a real alcoholic, I can't do that if I'm a real alcoholic. And so, of course, there came a time where I didn't have a defense. You know, you'll hear a lot of people also saying it's the first drink that gets you drunk, but that's not what the sentence says. They leave out the most important part of that sentence, which says it's the thought that precedes the first drink that gets you drunk. It's the thought. It's the insanity in that thought that I have that gets me drunk. And so I went out for 2 years. I came back, and I'll come back to that. Each and every one of us in the meeting here has at some time had some sort of trauma that made us want to do to shut this off, to just stop my mind, that negative talk that I don't even know is there at the moment. And they all differ. Everyone's emotional trauma is different than the others. You could have the same exact thing happen to you, but how you react to it will be completely different. So we can't judge what got people here. The high bottom, low bottom drunk gets me sick. It's about how you feel when you walk into Alcoholics Anonymous, and that person that lives on the hill in the mansion can feel the exact same way as that person that's in the gutter. It's the feeling. And so mine was at about 10 years old. And there was a knock at our front door. And I followed my mom to the door and opened it up. And my brother was standing there. And he had his 3-week-old baby in his arms. And he looked at my mom and he said, "Take this baby, I don't want her." He was addicted to heroin, and he was an alcoholic. And that had taken him to a place where he didn't want his own child. And my mom was to take my niece, and we would eventually adopt her, and she became my sister. And I went from being the baby of the family to the middle child. I went from getting all the attention to getting no attention. My father at the same time got his dream. He bought a bar out on the waterfront in San Francisco. And so, you know, that was his dream, and he got that. And so at 10 years old, within the first 6 months of my being 10 years old, I lost the 2 male figures in my life. My father became absent in my life. I became angry. I felt unloved. And the saddest thing is that I would carry that throughout my adult life. I don't think I ever loved anyone throughout my adult life. And I never felt loved by anyone. I wouldn't allow you to love me. I wouldn't let you get that close because I was so afraid that you were going to leave me. My brother left me, and he was bigger than life to me. And so what happened is that triggers that mind. It triggers the thoughts. And I walk around in life as a young kid with this negative self-talking mind. I'm ugly. Nobody likes me. I'm fat. I'll never get this job. She won't say yes to me. She won't dance with me. And I carry along this negative self-talking mind throughout my day. And if I don't have a power that can stop these lies, because what happens is I start to believe the lies. And if I believe these lies that I'm telling myself, they'll affect my life as if they're the truth. I'll start walking around and I'll start believing these things. I became afraid and I didn't even know it. I didn't think I was afraid of anything. I was a pretty big boy, but it's a different fear. And it's a self-centered fear. And we believe that's the root of our problem as alcoholics. And I became afraid. And the only way that you can conquer these lies is with the truth. The only way that you can conquer fear is with the truth. Because fear is an illusion. Fear is not real. If you actually sit down and look at your fears, not only in the fourth step, but in that 11th step at night, when I look back at my day, if I look at the thought behind the fear, I can guarantee you that 99% of those thoughts aren't true. That 99% of those thoughts is me trying to figure out how something is going to come out. Future events already ruined. Fear. Thinking my way into not doing something. Fear. And that's how I lived. And then I got that first drink and it was like, oh my God. The chatter stopped. I found the first thing that could shut down what was going on in my head. And it was amazing. And I was able to be at that party that I was at when I had that first drink, and I was able to engage with people, excuse me, that I wouldn't normally engage with. And I was able to ask girls that I would never think of asking to dance. And I was able to just let go. The monkey was lifted off my back with that drink of alcohol. And it carried on. I just followed it and followed it and followed it. I drank more and more and more. And it would take more and more and more to get me to the place of not thinking until it stops working. And it stops working because no matter how much I drink, I still have those thoughts now. I can't drink them away anymore. And that's the worst place in life you can be, is where that crutch, that elixir stops working. And so, like I said, I go through those first 2 years. I don't get a power. I don't work the steps. I don't even barely talk to my sponsor. And when that one thing happens to me, where my mind, or my thoughts sober, I call it tripolar. Tripolar it's like this being high, so high in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Or being so low in Alcoholics Anonymous and never seeing what it looks like to be in the moment, to be where you're at. And I'm either one of those two things, right? Yeah, that tripolar, I think, hits most alcoholics right in the jaw. I come back to Alcoholics Anonymous again, and I'm beaten up. I start doing the same thing, but this time I work the steps. And I'm working the steps, and I always go through this. There's a couple of things I usually put into my shares. This is one of them. So I'm on the fourth step the second time around, and I get a phone call from that little 3-week-old baby who's my sister. She has 3 children of her own, and she said she's looking for my brother. She's looking for her father. And I said, I don't care. I hated him. See, that was the part of the steps that I wasn't willing to do when I came to that fourth step, because I was working all those 4 steps prior on Murph's will. And so I got a call back about 3 weeks later, and she said she found my brother, her father, and he was in the 17th year of a life sentence in prison. And he asked her if he could write me. And I said, I don't care. So I was to receive a letter from him. And the letter said that I was wrong not to be your big brother. And I was wrong to leave you with your father. And a few more wrongs. And he said, is there anything that I can do to make this right? And that sounded really familiar. And I wrote him a nasty letter back because I still blamed him. He was part of the reason why I couldn't have that spiritual awakening, because I wasn't willing to get rid of the hatred I had for him. And he wrote me back, and he said, I didn't do this for you. I did this for me. And I thank God that you were brought into my life, because today I feel freer than I've ever felt before. Here's a man with 17 years in prison that found a freedom through the 9th step of Alcoholics Anonymous. Free behind bars. He would become the most spiritual man that I know. Alcoholics Anonymous allowed me to form a relationship with him. And he passed away 6 months ago, 46 years in prison. And he did more in that prison than I could ever think of doing in my lifetime. And he taught me lessons. And he was my spiritual guide, and I miss him so much. But that's the power of the steps. That's a power of making those amends that I don't want to make when I get to that 9th step. I was to do the rest of the steps. And I can tell you one thing, on page 104, there's nothing there that says the end. Right? It doesn't say the end there. And this is what this reading was talking about. It's not an end there. It's a beginning. That 12th step is a beginning to a new life. But what I can do to mess that up. And it's all about the 10th, 11th, and 12th steps. I would be in for 8 more years, and I went out for 2 years. I wasn't willing to give up the hatred for my father, and I wasn't fully surrendered. You have to be fully committed to AA before you even work the steps. If you're not fully committed, it's a waste of your time. I have to have a complete surrender in that first step. There can be nothing, zero, in my idea book of maybe if this happens or if that happens, or, if Mars aligns with Venus, that I'll be okay. I have to fully commit to that surrender. And what that does is it opens my mind up to the idea of God. You see, when I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous, I thought I had a problem with God. And I found out that I didn't. I never had a God. I never prayed to God. I never had a God in my life. What I had a problem with was your God. I had a problem with Sky's God, with Karen's God, with what you told me about God, your conception of your God, religion, whatever the case may be. That's who I had a problem with. I never had my own. And my sponsor told me, this is the part in that second step where you need to do some work, Murph. You can't sit on the TV watching Netflix expecting your life to change. God's not going to change your life for you. But what God will do is give you the strength. And what God will do is shut that mind from those lies, which allows you to do the things that you need to do yourself. That was a new concept. I wanted everybody else to fix me, and I wasn't willing to do the work. And so he said, this is the time you start to seek and search for something that makes sense to you. Write on a piece of paper all the things God would be if there was a God, if you're having a problem, if you're agnostic. Just what your idea of God would be like if there was a God. And start with that. When I got to the third step, turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand. And my will is my thinking, and my life are my actions. So that was it. You ever heard somebody tell you, turn it over? Turn it over? I never asked what it was. What is it? What is I can't turn a situation over to God. But I can turn what I think about that situation over to God. That's the it. The it was my thinking. That's what I was turning over to God. That's what I was giving to God. And so I got to that fourth step, and for the first time, I realized that I had never done the fourth step on God's will. The fourth step was always done on Murph's will. And Murph is afraid, and Murph is dishonest, and Murph is not thorough. And I would go through those fourth steps, again, in compliance, hearing what I thought my sponsor wanted to hear, writing down what he told me to write down. None of my own thoughts or my own considerations in the fourth step. And when I got to that fourth column of the fourth step, the exact nature of my wrongs, it was fear, dishonesty, self-seeking, and self-centeredness. And so I looked at each and every one of these resentments, and I looked at each person. Where was I afraid with this person? Where was I self-seeking? Where was I self-centered? Where was I dishonest? And then I began to see my part in it. You see, that fourth column in the fourth step carries me through 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Everything I need to know about the fifth step, the sixth step, the seventh step, the eighth step, and the ninth step are in the fourth column of the fourth step. That's how important it is to do that fourth step on God's will and not my will, so I can see these things. When you get to step 6 and 7, after you've admitted to God, yourself, and into another human being, after I get to that sixth and seventh step, everybody wants to read drop the rock, 12 and 12, all this wordy stuff on the sixth and seventh step. And it's only a paragraph in the big book. Now, some people will say more will be revealed. That's why there's so much stuff in the sixth and seventh step. But the real reason why is because it's none of my freaking business. 6 and 7 are none of my business. They're all God's business. I don't know what my character defects are. I don't know what my assets are. I don't know what God is going to use in me, or that God needs to use in me to get me closer to God and closer to my fellows. I wanted to go to school to college. I'd never gone to college. I was a terrible high school student. Sports got me through high school. And I kept procrastinating on it. Year after year, I would procrastinate on going to school. And one day my sponsor goes, "What's wrong with you?" I was in a mood. And I go, I just keep procrastinating on going to school. And he looks at me and he goes, "You think procrastination is your problem?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm not going to school. Right? I keep putting it off." He goes, "What are you afraid of?" And I go, "What?" He goes, "What are you afraid of?" Well, I was afraid I wouldn't be able to make the grade. And here's the fear definition. The fear. This is where I hope you really listen and understand where I'm coming from with this. right? I was afraid I couldn't make the grade. And he looks at me and he goes, "You've never been in a college class, you've never opened a college book, and you know that you're not going to make the grade? That's not true. It's not a fact. You don't know. You can't know." And I saw this for the first time, and I gave that fear to God with my sponsor. And then the great one: I can't afford to go to school. And my sponsor goes, "How much does it cost?" And I go, "I don't know." I had never even looked up the cost to go to school, and yet fear, that lie, had convinced me, because I believed it, that I couldn't afford to go to school. And once I ran all these fears past my sponsor and we gave them to God, my mind was completely empty. It's a great meditation. If you want to try a great meditation, run something through your head with a problem that you're going through. Look at those thoughts in your meditation and throw them out and give them to God, and you'll be at a quiet place. And all of a sudden, this intuitive thought came to me. Call Rob. He went to school when he was 50 years old. I'd never even thought of that because I was so consumed in fear, so consumed in the lies that I was telling myself. And so I called Rob up, and we got together and we went through all this stuff. And 2 days later, I was enrolled in college. And I was to carry a 3.9 grade point average through college. And I went to college at 52 years old. So that's what believing these lies will get you. I have to learn a way to look at my thoughts, to see them for what they really are when I'm in fear. When you start to practice that on a nightly basis, every single night, they start to disappear. You become less likely to not do something because you're afraid of it. I need a constant reminder through the 11th step of what I can accomplish with God's power. And as I practice this over and over again, the negative voice gets quieter and quieter until I begin to stop hearing the lies. I did the 8th step, and my sponsor always says, "Do you know what all means?" All means all. All doesn't mean a portion of the amends. All doesn't mean a portion of that list that I make. It says all. And then it says I make amends to them all, right? I learned that way before I was even making the amends, I would lie to myself. I'd be in fear on how this person was going to react to my amends. I was already figuring this stuff out before I ever even did it. And fear will take you, and it'll stop you from doing the things that you can accomplish when you start seeing the lies. And so when you get to the 9th step and you start making those amends, that's when you start doing 10, 11, and 12. You don't wait until after you're done making your amends to begin 10, right? I get a daily reprieve contingent upon my spiritual, I'd say, connection. It says condition in the book, right? How close God is to me, what my conscious contact with God is. I get that spiritual awakening. I have a 24-hour period of time, and that's all I have to worry about. I don't have to worry about tomorrow, right? And so what's that reprieve from? Here we go again. The daily reprieve is a reprieve from my negative thoughts. I get a reprieve from those contingent upon my spiritual connection, how connected I am to God, to that higher power. Pause when agitated or doubtful. How many of us remember to pause when we're doubtful? I wasn't. I never paused when I was doubtful. I tried to figure it out myself, and I'd get myself in more trouble, believing those lies. And my sponsor got it from his sponsor, who got it from his sponsor. On awakening, In that 11th step, in the morning, the vultures are sitting on your bedpost. And the vultures are waiting for you to wake up. And right when you open up those eyes, hey, Murph, let's talk about how unappreciated you are at work. Murph, let's talk about how disrespected you were with the girlfriend last night. Hey, Murph, let's talk about the price of ground beef in Burlingame where I live. And before you get your foot off the bed, your mind can be racing with negative thoughts. So on awakening, the first thing I do every morning, the first thing I did at 4:10 this morning when my eyes opened up was I surrendered. Murph's life run by Murph doesn't work. Never has, never will. Right? And I asked God in. And I asked God to direct my thinking. Let it be divorced from self-pity, which is the highest form of self-centeredness. Oh, this doesn't work. Oh, this isn't working. Oh, I don't know how to stay sober. Oh, this, oh, that, and on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Only thinking of myself. Direct my thinking. Let it be void from resentment, from fear. You see, if you start your day with God every morning and you make that a practice, you can keep God with you more during the day. Said there's no excuse, none, for not doing that 11th step in the morning. If it's important enough, I'll find a way. If it's not important enough, I'll find an excuse. The 11th step is an everyday thing for the rest of your life. But what happens is it becomes a working part of your life. It becomes a place where you don't even think about doing it anymore. Right? It just happens because you start seeing the results of it. You start seeing the results of that 11th step. And at night, every night, before I retire at night, that doesn't mean that like 10 minutes before you're ready to go to sleep, you go, oh my God, I got to do my 11th step. It says before I retire. That can be an hour before I retire, 2 hours before I retire. But I have to look back at my day, every day, and look for the things that keep me blocked from God. Look, where was I afraid? Where was I self-centered? Where was I self-seeking? Right? Where was I dishonest? As long as we're alive, we're going to make mistakes. Over and over and over. My sponsor likes this quote that I love too. Mistakes are portals to discovery. I'm going to keep making these mistakes, right? But I have a way out. Every night, I can look at those mistakes. I can right those wrongs before I go to sleep. You see, the 11th step is the greatest sleeping pill there is. It's a great sleeping pill. I used to sleep 3 hours and wake up, 2 hours and wake up in thinking, wake up in what's going on the next day. I sleep straight through now. Maybe get up to use the bathroom, but I straight through. I go right back to sleep because I have nothing in my head from the prior day. You can't stay clean on yesterday's shower. I have to wake up every morning as a new morning. How beautiful is that? Me and Sky could be talking. Yes, could have been talking yesterday. Sky's in a mood. I don't know what kind of mood Sky is in. I have no idea. But Sky is kind of, she's kind of coming at me a little bit. I don't like the way she's talking to me. Now I can go home. And then the next day, I see Sky, and I carry that with me into the next day. And then if Sky could be in a totally different place, be engaging with me, and I'm still on yesterday. How beautiful is it that you can take every day and begin it as a new day with every one of your relationships, with everyone that's in your life? And I'll tell you a perfect example. How much time do I have left, Sky?
You're good for a few minutes.
Okay, I go back at this one. What kept me blocked over and over and over again was that hatred for my father. I hated him with every ounce of me. And when I went into the fourth step, this time on God's power and not Murph's, I wasn't looking, me and my sponsor, I wasn't looking for what happened to Murph, what my father had done to me. My father was 6'5", 350 pounds. And when he hits you, you can imagine as a kid. And I hated him. But this time, I started to wonder what happened to my father. Why was he the way he was? And I went and I started asking questions with relatives. And regrets come from unasked questions. And I started asking him questions, and he said that in World War II, your father's job was to go into prisoner of war camps and get the Jewish prisoners out. And what he saw damaged him. When he came back, he was not the same man. He was at a picnic with his first wife. A bee stung her in the throat. It swelled in. She suffocated and died right in front of him. My brother was there. He lost that dream, his bar, to bankruptcy. We lost our home, and he was an alcoholic. And for the first time, with God with me, I was able to see and have empathy for a man I had hated my entire life. I had wasted all those years hating him, and I didn't know his story. Find out the truth about your resentments, because you may be mad at somebody who lost their mother that morning and didn't tell you. Something could have happened to their child, and because they were abrupt with me, I think it's about me when it's about them and what's going on in their lives and has nothing to do with me. What encompasses this reading more than anything is on page 100. 6 minutes. Okay, thank you. On page 100, where it says, "Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your circumstances." It doesn't matter what's going on. If you follow the dictates of a higher power, you can get through anything. When I said about the spiritual awakening and what we needed to do, when I walked here, everybody had a different perception of Murph. When I started speaking, what's Murph going to be like? Wonder how old Murph is. Wonder where Murph's from. Wonder if his share is going to be lousy. I wonder if he's single. No, I'm just kidding. Not that one. No, I'm just playing. And all these different things can go into my mind, these wrong perceptions. Me having a perception of somebody I don't even know. Not knowing what Murph felt like when he woke up this morning. Not knowing what burden Murph is carrying with him today. And it carries me into the 12th step. You know, God can bring me joy without things, but things without God will never bring me joy. I have this unsatisfiable mind when I'm untreated. Nothing is good enough. If I don't have that power, I start to seek outside of myself for all these things that I think are going to make me happy. I don't understand that this program is not made to be worked from the outside in. It's to be worked from the inside out. In order for me to get things that I enjoy and that I appreciate, I have to get right spiritually. I have to get right inside. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep chasing and chasing and chasing things that I think are going to make me happy. And I'm excited for a while, but soon I end up empty if I'm untreated. I have to treat myself every single day. If you're walking around Alcoholics Anonymous like I was, afraid to tell people in Alcoholics Anonymous the pain I was in, How could you ever know how I felt? That terminal uniqueness, that grandiosity that all alcoholics have untreated. Today, working with other alcoholics is the joy of my life. I didn't know I could have so much joy working with someone else, doing for someone else. Every day, I wake up, I'm happy. Every day I wake up, I love Murph. I love Murph. I love my life. I am happy 95% of the time. And there's people in here again that are going to perceive something and scoff at that. And usually we find something hokey if we've never experienced it. Why can't you be happy 95% of the time? If you can be unhappy 95% of the time, why can't you be happy 95% of the time? Well, the reason is because I wasn't doing the work, right? Each and every day is a new day. Each and every day I get to wake up alive, wondering what the hell is going to happen today? What awesome stuff am I going to run into? Whose life can I alter? Can I change? Alcoholics Anonymous is absolutely beautiful. If you decide today to stop working Murph's Anonymous, Sky's Anonymous, Tina's Anonymous, and grab somebody and go through the steps. Oh, I've already done the steps. I did them last month. Did you have a spiritual awakening? Are you a different person right now? Or are you still yelling at your wife? Are you still yelling at your kids? Are you still screaming at people on the freeway? Those are really good things to think about, to ask yourself. Life is wonderful. I never thought I could be in a place that I'm in today. I love life. And I love you guys. And you know, the greatest part is I'll end it with, oh, I got 20 seconds. I'll end it with, I don't give a rat's butt what you think of me. I do not care. I don't live my life based on what you think of me. You can have whatever opinion you have of me. It's none of my business. What my business is helping the alcoholic that's suffering. So thank you very much for having me today. I really appreciate it.